Today's story is about a guy who bought a beach house with his own money, no co-signers, no parental help, no shortcuts. He saved for years, closed on it alone, and kept the whole thing quiet. It was the one place in his life that felt genuinely his. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, his bank manager calls him at work with a very calm voice and very bad news. His property had been refinanced the day before, without him, using a forged signature. The $240,000 cash out was already routed to his dad's LLC. Here's the thing, though. The wire hadn't actually moved yet, and he moved faster. This is a masterclass in staying ice cold when everything around you is actively on fire. My parents refinanced my beach house was without my consent and told me to suck it up. I want to start with the beach house because it's the part that matters most to everything that comes after. I bought it 3 years ago after saving longer than that, and I want to be clear. It wasn't some trophy or a flex. It was a one-bedroom place with an older deck that needed work and a view I'd earned by not spending money on 100 other things. I made every decision on that property myself. I negotiated the price myself. I closed on it by myself, signed every page, and put it in my name only. I'd never once mentioned refinancing to my parents. Never discussed the mortgage balance with them. Never handed them a key or added them to any document connected to that address. That was intentional. My parents, I'll call them Diane and Clint, have spent most of my adult life treating my financial wins like they belong to everyone, and my objections like a character flaw they were working on correcting. Diane runs the social side, keeps her hands clean, and plays the role of the concerned mother when the room requires it. Clint runs the decisions, keeps his voice low, and has a way of saying things that sound reasonable right up until you think about them later and realize you just agreed to something you never actually agreed to. I'd learned early on to keep the beach house out of their conversations. When I bought it, I said almost nothing. When they'd ask about it, I'd give short answers and change the subject. But about a year before all of this, they showed up unannounced with grocery bags, like they were doing me a favor. Diane walked through every room with her eyes going over everything in that specific way she has, not looking at what's there, but at what isn't hers yet. Clint stood at the window, arms loose, looking out at the water, and said in that easy, casual tone of his, "Property like this should stay in the family." I laughed once, short and flat. "It does," I told him. "It's mine." Diane smiled at me the way she smiles when she's already decided something you said doesn't count. "We'll see," she said softly, like it was a joke. I thought about that moment a lot on the drive to the bank. The call came on a Tuesday, while I was in the middle of a spreadsheet that wasn't going anywhere. My phone buzzed against the edge of my desk. Caller ID said Harbor Point Bank. I almost let it go to voicemail. The only thing I had active there was the mortgage, and that was on autopay. But I stepped into the hallway and answered anyway. The man on the line identified himself as Grant Kelso, branch manager. He said he was calling about my beach house property. My throat tightened before he finished the sentence. He told me the property had been refinanced the day before, that a new loan number was active in the system, a new payment schedule had been uploaded, and the closing package was already processed. When I said I hadn't signed anything, he paused. It wasn't the pause of someone who thought I was confused. It was the pause of someone who'd already looked at the file and suspected something was wrong before he picked up the phone. "The parties who initiated it," he said carefully, "were listed as your parents." I didn't react out loud. I kept my voice flat and my hands still. I asked him what he meant by listed. He explained that 2 individuals had presented documentation claiming they were acting on my behalf, identification, an authorization packet, the works. I told him they had no power of attorney, no written authorization, nothing from me in any form. He said he understood, and the way he said it made it clear he already believed me. He asked me to come in that day. I grabbed my bag and walked out without explaining myself to anyone. On the highway, my brain started doing what it always does when Clint and Diane get involved. It built a timeline. Unprompted visits, casual comments about the family and what should stay together. The way Diane's eyes moved through rooms when she thought nobody was paying attention. It all started feeling less like annoyance and more like planning. I parked at the bank and walked straight to the front desk with steady hands and a hollow feeling in my chest. Grant met me in the lobby. Mid-40s, navy suit, a polite expression that had already dropped most of its customer service warmth by the time he shook my hand. He walked me into a glass-walled office, let me sit first, and pulled up the file without making small talk, which I respected. "You have an existing mortgage on the beach property," he said. "Good standing, modest balance. Yesterday afternoon, a refinance application moved from pending to funded." He clicked through the screen and a scanned packet appeared. Forms stacked in neat order, clean formatting, the kind of thing that looks legitimate if you want it to. He zoomed in on the signature page. I leaned forward and saw my name, my address, my handwriting almost. "That's forged," I said. His eyes moved to mine, then back to the screen. "I compared it to your signature card on file," he said quietly. "It doesn't match your pressure pattern." He kept clicking, an authorization form that looked official enough to fool someone who wanted to be fooled. Then a notary stamp at the bottom, not blank, filled out completely. Commission number, date, county. I stared at that stamp and something specific surfaced. My mother had a friend who handled paperwork. A woman who showed up at family parties with a leather tote bag and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Diane had mentioned her once, said it like she was proud of it. She gets signatures handled quickly. I didn't say any of that out loud. Grant cleared his throat. "There's more," he said. "This refinance wasn't just a rate adjustment." He pulled up a funding screen. It was structured as a cash out. I asked how much. He said the number plainly. $240,000. My vision didn't blur. My voice didn't shift. But my skin went cold in a way that started at my fingers and moved inward. "Where was it going?" I asked. He clicked into a wire instruction PDF, and I watched his eyes scan it, watched his jaw tighten the way a jaw tightens when what you're reading is worse than you expected. "It was routed to an account at a different institution," he said, "under the name Kessler Consulting LLC. He zoomed in on the beneficiary line, C. Hale. I didn't say my father's name out loud. I didn't want to hand Grant my reaction like it was evidence he hadn't asked for. I just said, "That's my father's initial. That LLC is new to me." Grant nodded once like he'd already made the connection himself. He told me the wire hadn't moved. The file had triggered a compliance alert before disbursement, and everything was held. Pause for a second. This is me jumping in, not the OP. I need you to really sit with what just happened here. Diane and Clint showed up at a bank with forged documents, and a notary who apparently moonlights as a favor machine tried to pull $250,000 out of their kid's house and wired it to an LLC under the dad's initial. C. Hale. Not even a fake name, just their own name with a trench coat on. That's not a scheme. That's a crime with autocorrect enabled. Walmart mob bosses. And they thought it would work because they'd been steamrolling this guy for years, and it always landed. This time, the bank made one phone call first. Catastrophic mistake for them. Stay with me. Grant brought in Petra Walsh, his compliance officer. A sharp woman in a charcoal blazer who walked into the room like she'd been briefed on the walkover and didn't need anyone to catch her up. She confirmed everything Grant had found and added a layer that mattered more than any of it. The wire was held, the fraud flag was active, but the bigger problem was the county recorder's office. If the forged deed of trust had already been submitted for recording on my parcel, they needed to either intercept it or file a fraud affidavit before it completed. Once it recorded, it got significantly harder to undo. She asked if I had my beach house deed. I said it was in my safe at home. She told me what I'd need at the county, the recording log, any e-recording submissions, the submitter's credentials. "Don't argue," she said. "Don't explain. Just get the facts." Grant was already printing. The printer behind him spat out pages in short bursts, and he slid a folder across his desk. An activity summary with timestamps, intake station ID, and a note about who'd uploaded the closing package to the system. He mentioned the closer. The person listed on the closing packet as the facilitation partner. Her name was Lydia Cross, and she was listed as the representative from a company called Shoreline Closings LLC. "She's flagged in our system," Grant said. "Not a public ban, but enough irregularities that we stop processing and escalate." I asked how she ended up on my file. "Because someone requested her," he said. "Or someone on the inside didn't ask enough questions." Before I left, Petra handed me a single page, Harbor Point's internal fraud case number. Take that to the county clerk, she said. They can call us to verify the hold. I walked out and drove to the Seabrook County Recorder's office with the folder on my passenger seat, which is the most I'll say about that drive because my brain was somewhere between furious and focused, and neither one of those was useful to describe. Inside the county building, everything smelled like old paper and institutional air conditioning. Fluorescent lights, a numbered ticket system, a sign on the wall in big letters that said, "No legal advice provided." I waited, stepped up when my number was called, and kept my voice level. "My name is Nate Hale," I said. "I need to check the recording status for my beach house parcel. I believe fraudulent documents may have been submitted yesterday," the clerk typed. Her face stayed neutral at first, then it didn't. She clicked again, and her posture shifted. The small, specific shift people make when they see something unexpected and don't want to react visibly, but already have. "I'm seeing an e-recording submission," she said. "Submitted by who?" She clicked into the detail view. Submitted contact, Lydia Cross. Company listed as Shoreline Closings, LLC. My stomach went cold because Grant's office wasn't where this started. It was just the first place my parents' paperwork hit real resistance. She told me there were 2 documents in the queue, a deed of trust from the refinance, and directly behind it, a limited power of attorney. I stood there and thought about that for a second. They weren't just forging a signature. They were stacking authorization on top of authorization, building a legal structure thick enough that any objection I raised would sound like confusion. One forged signature could be a misunderstanding. A deed of trust, plus a notarized POA, plus a borrower affidavit is architecture. The clerk asked if I wanted to file a fraud affidavit and place a recording hold on my parcel. "Yes," I said. "Both." She slid a form across the counter and called her supervisor. While I filled out the form, my phone buzzed. One new text. "Diane, we only did what you would have wanted. Call me before you make it worse." I took a screenshot of it and put my phone back in my bag. The recording supervisor, Anita, came out from a side door with a badge and a binder and no warm expression and no small talk. My kind of person. I gave her Harbor Point's fraud case number. Her eyes sharpened slightly when she heard Lydia's name. More importantly, they sharpened when she heard Shoreline Closings. "We see their submissions regularly," she told me quietly. "When they're clean, they're clean. When they're not, they arrive in clusters. Power of attorney, borrower affidavit, quick cash out, quick record." She placed a temporary hold on my parcel, printed the full e-recording submission log with timestamps and credential details, and set up a property fraud watch on the title so I'd be notified automatically if anything else hit the queue. Then she walked me to their in-house notary. I signed the fraud affidavit in person, under lights I could see clearly, in front of someone I could look in the eye. The irony wasn't subtle. The county needed my real signature to stop the fake one from completing. The notary stamped it. Anita attached it to the queue. "Hold is active," she said. "If Shoreline Closings pushes anything else through on this parcel, it flags immediately." I tucked the stamped copy into my folder and walked out. Okay, hold on. For anyone just listening, this is me, not the OP talking. I want to make sure you caught what just happened here because it went fast. This guy found out his house was being robbed, not in the future, actively in the process, while sitting at work, and instead of calling his parents to yell about it, instead of texting anyone, instead of losing a single hour to emotion, he drove straight to the bank, collected the evidence, drove straight to the county recorder's office, filed a fraud affidavit, locked his parcel from recording, and set up a fraud watch on the title, all before lunch. That's not someone who panicked. That's someone who's been quietly keeping receipts his whole life and just finally had a reason to spend them. I was halfway back to Harbor Point when Grant called again. His voice was faster this time, still controlled, but tighter around the edges. "Mr. Hale," he said, "your parents are at the branch. Right now." "Yes, they didn't come to apologize." He paused. "They're demanding release of the cash-out proceeds. They're claiming you authorized them verbally, and that you're—" He picked his next word with care. "Confused about the details." I kept my voice steady. "Don't speak to them about me." "I'm not," he said. "Compliance is with me. Security is with me. But there's something else." Another pause. They brought Lydia Cross. There it was. Grant said Lydia was at the counter applying pressure to staff, referencing prior relationships with the branch, claiming the wire had already been approved internally and was being held by an error, trying to create urgency so someone made a mistake before the fraud hold was confirmed in writing. He needed me back at the branch, not to confront anyone, but to be on record in person. He offered me the side door so I didn't have to walk through the lobby and give my parents an audience to perform for. I don't care if they see me, I said. I care about them performing for a room, and not a record. He said to use the side door anyway. A security guard met me at the locked side entrance and walked me through a back hallway that smelled like carpet cleaner and printer heat. Grant and Petra were in his office. I didn't need to ask how the front lobby looked. I could hear it faintly through the glass. Diane's voice carrying its rehearsed grief. Clint's voice low and certain and deliberate, the one he uses when he's already decided the outcome of a conversation. And Lydia's energy, which wasn't soft at all, jaw tight, leaning over the counter, trying to force urgency into whoever was standing closest. Petra pulled up the internal audit log and showed me something new. Someone had attempted to push the wire out that morning while I was at the county building. An internal override request submitted from a lobby desk station. The fraud hold caught it and denied it automatically. And behind that, an account profile change request, a mailing address update on my account, also submitted from inside the branch. The station ID on both attempts traced back to Kyle Marsh, a loan associate who transferred in from another branch about 2 months ago. Bex, the security lead, had pulled the camera footage and scrubbed it to the timestamp. On the monitor, I could see Kyle at his station, then walking away toward the printer. In the gap, Lydia Cross walked into frame. She didn't look lost. She didn't hesitate. She moved like someone who knew exactly what to do with a bank workstation, angled her body so the lobby couldn't see her hands, and typed. Kyle came back holding printed pages. Lydia smiled at him, like she just handed him something he didn't know he was holding. Wait. Let me stop here for a second because I need you to really see this. Shoreline Lydia, the closer with repeat offender flags on her license, who was already listed in a financial crimes bulletin, who brought forged documents into a bank, just walked up to a new employee's workstation while he was at the printer and typed under his login. While Diane played the heartbroken mother in the lobby. While Clint talked over the manager. While an override request for $250,000 was sitting in queue. This wasn't improvised. Diane supplied the emotion, Clint supplied the pressure, Lydia supplied the mechanism. That's not a family helping their kid. That's a crew. And the cameras caught every frame of it. Bex stepped into the office and updated us. Lydia was demanding to speak with someone senior. Diane was in tears, the controlled, broadcast kind. Clint was telling customers near the lobby that I was unwell and that the family was simply trying to sort things out on my behalf. And then, a call had come in from another branch across town. Same packet structure, same closer credential, different property, different borrower. Lydia Cross was not freelancing for my parents. My parents were one line item in a pattern. Grant said quietly, if this connects to Shoreline closings across multiple files, we're not just canceling your refinance. He looked at me. We're reporting the whole thing. Good, I said. My phone buzzed again. Harbor Point's app, a notification I'd never seen before. Account profile change requested. Mailing address update pending approval. The attempt Lydia had made from Kyle's station was still trying to push through. The hold was catching it, but they were still trying. In the lobby, I could hear my mother's voice rise, bright and clear, performing for the room. I'm his mother, she said. I'm just trying to protect him. Petra's phone was already in her hand. Police are on the way, she said. I stood up. I stepped out of Grant's office and into the lobby, just as the first officer came through the front entrance. My parents' heads snapped toward me in unison. Diane's face lit up with the kind of relief that only reads as genuine if the other person doesn't know what you've actually been doing for the past 24 hours. Nate, she said, voice full of it. Thank God. Tell them we were just trying to help. I didn't look at her. I looked at the officer, held up my ID, and kept it clean. My name is Nate Hale, I said. I did not authorize a refinance on my property. I did not sign any documents. My signature was forged. The officer took my ID, looked at Grant. You called him? Grant confirmed. Signature mismatch. Compliance alerts triggered on disbursement. Internal evidence of attempted wire release and address change from inside the branch. Clint stepped forward half a pace, voice smooth and measured. This is a family matter, he said. We were acting on his behalf. He's been under a lot of stress lately, and I think there's been a miscommunication. I pulled the county paperwork from my folder. The recorder's office placed a hold on my parcel this morning, I said to the officer. 2 fraudulent instruments were submitted for recording through an e-recording credential tied to Shoreline Closings, LLC. Submitter contact, Lydia Cross. Lydia's head snapped toward me. Not fear, more like irritation, like I'd interrupted something she was still trying to manage. That's not what that means, she said, moving slightly closer. Sometimes borrowers get nervous about rate changes and misunderstand the paperwork. The officer turned to her. Ma'am, who are you? Lydia recalibrated. Lydia Cross, closing facilitator. I'm here to help resolve. Are you an employee of this bank? No, but then you don't get to resolve anything at their counter, he said. Step back. Diane's voice rose again, the tears already loaded. Officer, please. My son is confused. He doesn't understand what he's... The officer didn't look at her. He looked at Grant. Where's your compliance officer? Petra stepped forward. Petra Walsh, compliance. You have evidence the signature was forged? Petra laid it out without making it a speech. Signature mismatch. $240,000 cash out, directed to a beneficiary tied to the father's name. Attempted wire release while the fraud hold was active. Attempted address change submitted from inside the branch using an employee login while the borrower was disputing the file. Attempted address change, the officer repeated. In the audit log, Petra said. Station ID, timestamp, and login used. Bex came forward with a sealed envelope and a printout. The officer scanned it. Logan used was Kyle Marsh. Kyle was standing near the far wall and flinched hard enough for 3 people to notice. Diane's eyes moved to him. Clint's gaze narrowed in that quiet, deliberate way of his. Lydia didn't look at Kyle at all. She kept her eyes on the officer, chin slightly forward, still trying to manage the room. That's impossible, Lydia said. I never touched a bank computer. Bex's voice didn't change. We have camera footage, time-stamped. You at the station at 11:18. You typed. Lydia's smile twitched at the corner. Hold on. I need you to feel this scene properly. Shoreline Lydia is standing in a bank lobby in broad daylight with a cop 3 feet away, actively trying to argue that she wasn't typing at a computer when we literally just watched her type. Diane's broadcast tears have dried midstream because the math stopped working. Clint's done the silent calculation, and his eyes are starting to drift toward the exit. And Kyle, 2 months on the job, knew nothing, is standing by the wall looking like he just realized the favor he thought he was doing was actually a co-signature on someone else's crime. This is what happens when a plan built on nobody checks anything meets a bank that checks everything, and a guy who went to the county first. Petra stepped closer to the officer. We also have a log of an internal override request submitted this morning, she said. Someone attempted to release the wire while the fraud hold was active. It was denied automatically. We have the station ID and timestamp. Wire amount, the officer said. Grant's jaw tightened. $240,000. My mother made a small sound in her throat. It was the sound of someone who had been playing confused and for 1/2 second forgot that was the role. Clint's expression stayed controlled, but his eyes moved once toward the exit. The officer looked at me. Mr. Hale, did you authorize your parents to refinance your beach house? No. Did you authorize them to receive cash-out proceeds on your behalf? No. He nodded once, then turned back toward my parents and Lydia, and something in his tone shifted from customer service to this is now a case. He asked Lydia for identification. She produced it with a recovered smile. Diane jumped in helpfully. She's a professional. She's been doing this for years. The officer took Lydia's ID without responding to professional and spoke quietly into his radio. Bex returned from the side hallway. The second branch had called back. Same packet structure, same Shoreline Closings credential, different borrower, different property, same methodology. Lydia wasn't doing a one-off favor. She was running a pattern. Pattern, Petra said under her breath. The officer caught it. He looked at Lydia's ID one more time, then back up, voice unchanged. Miss Cross, are you aware that you're currently listed in a financial crimes bulletin? Lydia's smile froze. Diane's mouth opened slightly. Clint went completely still. I need you to stay right where you are, the officer said to Lydia, because the detective is on his way, and this file is about to become a much larger case than a closing packet. Detective Ray Voss arrived the way actual consequences arrive, quiet, fast, and without asking anyone's permission. He didn't raise his voice. He walked in with a notebook in one hand and his badge already out, eyes moving over the room in that way people do when they're already counting things. Detective Voss, financial crimes, he said to the officer, then to Petra. Lydia tried to reset. Detective, this is a misunderstanding. I think if we just... Voss didn't look at her yet. He looked at Grant. Who's the borrower? Grant gestured toward me. Voss looked at me, calm and even. Mr. Hale, did you sign any refinance documents? No. Did you authorize anyone to sign for you? No. One nod. He was checking boxes, not collecting emotion. He turned to Petra. Show me what you have. Petra didn't give him a speech. She handed him the folder. Audit log printouts, signature comparison, wire instructions, the override request, the address change attempt, Bex's time-stamped footage summary. He scanned the top page, then looked at Bex. You have footage of her at the workstation? Time-stamped. Clear, she typed. Lydia's jaw tightened. I leaned over. I was pointing something out. Voss finally looked at her. His eyes were flat in a way that isn't angry and isn't warm and is somehow worse than either. What is your role in this refinance? I'm the closer, she said, still too smooth. I facilitate signatures and routing. And the e-recording submissions, Voss said, were sent through your company credential. That's standard procedure. It is, Voss said, which means it's completely traceable. Diane tried. Detective, my son is under a lot of pressure. He sometimes doesn't understand. Voss cut her off without looking at her. Ma'am, he said, still reading the file. I'm not taking medical opinions from family members while I'm reviewing a fraud case. Diane went quiet. Clint's voice came out low and controlled. This is harassment. We are his parents. We were acting in his best interest. Your interest, I said. Clint's eyes moved to me and stayed there. Voss didn't blink. He looked at Grant. Cash out amount? $240,000. Beneficiary on the wire? Grant said it cleanly. Kessler Consulting, LLC. Beneficiary line shows C. Hale. Clint's composure cracked just slightly at the edges. That's my business account, he said. We were going to hold it for him until he... Voss held up one hand. Not aggressive, just final. You're going to stop talking, he said. You'll have the opportunity to explain all of that later. Clint's mouth closed. Voss turned to me. Mr. Hale, do you want to pursue charges? Yes, I said. My voice was steady. I want the refinance canceled, my parcel protected, and a formal investigation opened. Good, he said. Because this is not a civil disagreement. This is attempted mortgage fraud with a planned diversion of funds. Attempted, Lydia said quietly, like the word was something she could hold on to. Voss didn't bother arguing with her. Attempted is still criminal, he said. Then he moved. He asked Grant for the station ID log. Asked Petra for the fraud case number. Asked Bex to certify and preserve the footage with a chain of custody. Then he called for Kyle. Kyle stepped forward from the wall looking pale, eyes darting toward my parents like he was looking for permission to speak. Were you pressured? Voss asked. Kyle swallowed. His eyes moved to Lydia for half a second, then away. She kept saying the wire had to release today, he said. She said she'd worked with the branch before. She said she knew people in management. He swallowed again. She leaned over while I was away from my station. She typed something. I thought she was just pulling up the file. She typed under your login, Voss said. Yeah, Kyle said. Small. Honest. Voss looked at Lydia. You accessed an employee workstation and submitted account changes under his credentials. That's not, Lydia started. It becomes illegal when the file is fraudulent, Voss said. And you knew it was fraudulent because you built it. Deed of trust, limited power of attorney, borrower affidavit, address change attempt. That's not clerical help. That's burial. My mother tried one more time, voice rising, bright and practiced. We are his family. We were trying to protect him. Voss turned toward her. Not angry, just closed. You're also the people who routed a $240,000 wire to your own account from his property, he said. Your relationship to him doesn't change what the paperwork says. Diane's tears stopped. Clint took one step back. Lydia Cross, Voss said. I'm detaining you pending further investigation. I'm requesting a warrant for your phone and any devices you use to submit the e-recording instruments. Lydia's eyes went wide, and the professional composure finally broke. Detaining me? For doing my job? For your role in a fraudulent refinance, Voss said, and for accessing a bank workstation to alter account information while the borrower was actively disputing the file. This is completely... The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, turn around. Lydia looked at Diane and Clint. Actually looked at them, waiting for something. For Clint's calm voice to come in and fix it, I think. He didn't move. Diane didn't move. Because my parents only back people who are still useful to them. Lydia turned. The cuffs clicked. That sound hit Diane differently than it hit me. To me, it was just a sound. To her, it was risk. The kind that doesn't get smoothed over with a phone call. Pause. I want to be here for a second. The cuffs clicking on Lydia while Diane and Clint stand there doing absolutely nothing to help the woman they brought specifically to do their dirty work. That right there is the whole dynamic. No backstory needed. These are people who use others as instruments and put them down the second the instrument becomes a problem. Lydia found that out about 6 seconds too late. And for Clint and Diane, Voss wasn't done. The wire instructions had Clint's name on the beneficiary line. The bank footage had both of them presenting the forged packet at the counter. The appointment log had their IDs. We were just helping was not going to survive a warrant. Voss looked at my father. Your parents aren't being arrested at this moment, he said. But I'm going to establish direct participation, and the wire instructions give me a strong place to start. He held up the wire instruction page. This routes to a beneficiary tied to your name, so we will get there. He looked at Petra. You have fraud counsel already? Engaged, she said. Good. I want written confirmation the bank is rescinding the refinance, holding disbursement, and preserving all internal logs. Funds were never released, Grant said. Voss looked at me. You moved fast, he said. If you'd waited, that wire would have gone. I want my home protected, I said. We'll get you there, he replied. 2 hours later, I was in a small interview room at the station with Voss and a records tech who scanned my folder page by page. I gave a statement that was deliberately boring, because boring is what wins in fraud cases. Dates, times, who called me, what Grant said, what Anita confirmed at the county, what the camera showed Lydia doing at the workstation, what the wire instructions showed on the beneficiary line. Voss didn't need me to guess at motives. He needed confirmed facts. When I finished, he slid a paper across the table. Credit freeze, property fraud watch, no contact order. File all three. I did. Final update. Harbor Point's legal team sent written confirmation within 24 hours. The refinance was formally rescinded and canceled for fraud. The $240,000 was never dispersed. The deed of trust submission was flagged and stopped. The county recorder's office kept the recording hold active until the bank's rescission documents were filed and the fraudulent queue was rejected entirely. A week later, Lydia Cross's company credential was suspended and her e-recording access revoked across multiple county portals. A warrant executed on her office devices tied her to other irregular files on different properties with different borrowers. The Seabrook case was one of several. She was charged with felony mortgage fraud and conspiracy. The footage wasn't deniable. The pattern was documented. She didn't get to walk that one back. Clint didn't get to hide behind the LLC or his measured voice. The attempted cash-out diversion was tied directly to him through the beneficiary designation, and the appointment log showing him at the bank presenting the packet. He was charged for his role in the scheme. Diane was charged as well. The bank footage and the recorded intake confirmed they'd both presented the forged documents together and had attempted to pressure staff while the fraud hold was active. They didn't get a warning. They got court dates, no contact conditions, and a legal record of the kind they'd spent my whole childhood managing carefully. It turns out the best way to avoid that kind of record is to not forge your kid's signature on a mortgage. And the beach house stayed mine. Not because I out-argued them or caught them in a dramatic confrontation. Because I moved before they could finish, let the institutions do what institutions exist for, and kept my mouth shut when every instinct said to call them first. The deck still needed work, by the way. I went to the hardware store about 3 weeks later. Bought the wrong size screws, had to go back a second time. That part was annoying. But I fixed the deck, and the house was mine. Some threads don't have a clean ending. The court process dragged on longer than anything in this post, and I don't know exactly what the final sentencing looks like. But the wire never moved. That's the part that mattered. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this guy did something extraordinary. He didn't. He just didn't hesitate, didn't tip off his parents that the trap was closing, and didn't give anyone a head start. That's it. But in a situation where most people burn the first hour making emotional phone calls and lose half their evidence window, this dude went straight to the bank and then straight to the county and let the paper trail do what it's supposed to do. The $240,000 sat there frozen because he made one phone call count. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you have gone to the bank first or confronted your parents? And if you're not subscribed yet, you already know what to do. Hit the button.